streets are on fire. I'll make you jump like you touch a live wire. Ain't no sitting down when I get in the zone. Just give me my crown, let the king take his throne.
Hello, Jake.
Hi, Keith. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Yeah, you're looking well. You're looking quite tanned.
Well, it was a lot warmer in Morocco last week, shall we say, than it was in the UK. So
yeah, Hannah's come back wearing a big jacket, still feeling the cold.
Yeah, it was a very nice week away. So, hello everyone. Welcome to this another bucket list adventure travel show. We're here today, and there was an announcement last week regarding Nepal and trekking in Nepal. So we thought we'd jump on the show today to just discuss that recent change on trekking in Nepal, and also then we thought, well, let's just have the show surrounding Nepal and answer any questions anyone might have to think about Nepal and trekking in Nepal.
Pretty much. that was the plan. And you and I can talk quite a while about Nepal because it's it's somewhere that you and I have been to quite a lot. It was the very first expedition that I ever did with you. It was not all those years ago. We went off to Nepal and did Everest Base Camp. And then we've been back a few times since, done Gokyo and a few other extensions. So it's cool. It's definitely, when people ask me what's your favourite trip, that is up there. It's always hard to choose what my favourite one is, but yeah, Nepal's always up there.
Yeah, I think Nepal's a massive adventure travel destination in terms of it's just got so much to offer to the adventure traveller, really, I would say.
It's got everything. I think, even though it's famous for its big mountains and, Everest obviously being the most famous, there's so much that you can do around places like Kathmandu as well that people don't often realise. Whitewater rafting, kayaking, more low altitude trekking. There's all the food. There's all of the culture. You could definitely go 5-6 times and see a completely different side every single time. Yeah.
So, I mean, we're here today. We can talk about Nepal. Like Jake said, we can keep it going and going and going in. But we're here to try and help anybody answer any questions they might have on Nepal. And we've got people in the office who are sat there monitoring the different groups and putting questions in, putting links into blog posts and stuff we've written as well. So, I mean, should we start off, Jake, with talking about what the change has been to what Nepal have said in terms of trekking in Nepal?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Nepal recently announced that you now need to have a guide with you on your trips. So that's obviously something that we've been doing for a long time. So it doesn't make any massive changes to what we're offering. But yeah, it does now mean that when people are thinking about traveling to Nepal, they need to take that into consideration, that you are going to need a guide as part of the new legal requirements.
Yeah, and that's not just on an Everest Base Camp trek. That's also on all of the trekking in Nepal. So the Nepalese government have seen that they've put it down to improve safety. I'm wondering if they've put it down to improving employment, but whichever way it is it's a positive with both. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to book it with a company like us. You just need to have a local porter or guide escort you whilst you are trekking in any of the national parks in Nepal. So whereas you used to be able to go and do the Annapurna circuit trek on your own, you used to be able to go in, buy the Lonely Planet guidebook and away you go. Same with Everest Base Camp. You can no longer do that. You have to go through the park gates with a approved porter or guide from that country. So that is the change that they've made. So like you say, to our trips, it makes no difference whatsoever. Like, obviously, we always use local guides on our trips, but where it is going to make the difference is, you know, you can no longer just rock up and go and do it solo on your own anymore.
No, I think even though, you know, I've been several times, it's not somewhere that I would go to without a guide. In fairness, if I was thinking about going back and doing base camp, I think the advantages of having a local guide or a guiding team, whether that's a UK company or not, are so useful. Especially as you get higher up, if you want to start using tea houses, just learning more on the trips, where, you know, whether it's the Langtang Valley or Annapurna, like, you're going to learn so much from chatting to people who have been there before and are able to guide you through and sort out accommodation and food. Yeah, there's so many advantages. So I do think it is a really good thing.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think you know, like we said, from what we do, it makes no difference. I think the experience you get by having a local guide with you, just to find out more, you know, the number of times you sort of, you know, what mountain's that over there, which, you know, you don't know that information when you're trekking on your own. So I think it's definitely, and, you know, when you need you know, if you're struggling with altitude, for example, and you have to get a helicopter out, like, it's not an easy task to do, to get a helicopter off a mountain. And, you know, we, having a local guide there to make those phone calls and deal with all that is,
well, even delays on flights and transport, you know, especially now that everybody's going out of, you know, Ramachat, that's something that can be a little bit, as well, for base camp, that's where you're flying out of, so that can always be a little bit logistically challenging. You know, and those guys are the best ones to deal with it. You know, they speak the language, they know everybody. Yeah, it's the easiest way to get about it. We'd be there a while.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, we both had that last season where we were stuck in Ramchat for an extra couple of days that we weren't expecting to be stuck in Ramchat for. And there's not a lot of accommodation in Ramchat, and we still kept our beds every night because our local team were there to make sure that we were sorted and we had accommodation for the night. So
yeah, well, other people had to go and find alternatives. You know, other people who hadn't, you know, they'd only anticipated spending one night were suddenly a little bit caught out.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I heard of some groups having to drive the 4 hours back to Kathmandu that afternoon to then get up in the morning again and drive the 4 hours back to Ramchat because there was nowhere for them to stay. You know, it's, so those things there are, you know, that's where having a local guide is definitely there to support you and look after you and make sure your trip, you know, goes smoothly in terms of that. So we've got some questions coming into the comments. One of the questions is, what's the benefit of picking Gokyo over the Everest Base Camp trek? Well, we could probably talk for about 35 minutes on that subject because we did last week on our podcast.
I was going to say, how long was the podcast?
So yeah, so we did a podcast on exactly that topic, why you would choose Gokyo over the Everest Base Camp trek. I'm sure one of the team in the office can put a link onto Apple so they can share that podcast with everyone. So if anyone wants the long answer, they can. But Jake, in a couple of sentences, how would you answer the question of picking Gokyo over the Everest Base Camp trek?
So I would say that the main benefit of booking onto something like Gokyo as an extension is going to be that you see a whole new part of Nepal and trail as you make your way back down. So you're doing more of a circular or semicircular route rather than just up and back in the same way. Also, for the sake of an extra couple of days, you know, you get to see so much more and, you know, experience more of the culture, more of the people. Yeah, I think you just get more for the time that you're out there, is what it comes down to, really.
Yeah, I think you're right. Someone's put, would have been going in 33 days. I guess good things come to those who wait. Just hoping they don't move the base camp location by next year. Now, there has been a lot of talk of that in the press, that they're looking to move base camp. I did think it would have been Cam who had posted that. Hi, Cam. Hope you're well. I don't think, from our perspective, we're going to see now when you get to the spot that we trek to, that they class as base camp. Actually, base camp continues on towards the Khumbu Glacier for like another mile, I would say, from where we are. And I know they're talking about moving base camp backwards, but I think all they're going to be doing is bringing the actual base camp further towards where we are, in essence. So I don't think where we stand and take the photos, I think that's going to pretty much be as it is. I think they're just going to start bringing more of the tents further back from the glacier, really.
Yeah, that's the thing with the Khumbu, is it's always shifting and changing and moving, and that is something that they've got to bear in mind, is what is the safest zone for them to be camping at. So it's done its job for the last few years. They're just having a bit of a reevaluation, but like I say, I can't imagine that having a huge impact on where you see all of our photos from, like that lovely one in the background.
Yeah, with our local guide team there. Another question that they get asked in the office is about accommodation, and obviously during an Everest base camp trek, accommodation is included. You don't generally camp on an Everest base camp trek. You stay in what is called a tea house. But what actually is a tea house?
So I'll try and sum it up nice and simply. A tea house is essentially a local lodge. It will have two sections to it. There will be usually a corridor with rooms going off either side. That's where you'll sleep, and then you'll go through that corridor, and there'll be a main seating area, usually with a big fire, big burner in the middle. I was about to say log burner, but quite often when you get higher up, they actually dry out the yak dung and they use those cakes, if you like, to heat the tea houses. So there'll be a big communal eating and living space, and that's where you'll spend a lot of time having your meals, chatting with everybody else. It's nice and warm. You can dry out your clothes if it has been a bit wet on the trail, and then you'll head back into like the sleeping part of it. It's usually run by a single family who will also be living there at the same time, and they'll be serving you. So you go in, you place your orders with what you'd like to eat. They do provide you a menu. It's pretty much the same menu in every single tea house. So what we find with a lot of our groups is that as people are getting higher up, day 1 and day 2, you're having a proper look through the menu and you're weighing up what you want and what you feel like. By day 7 or 8, you don't even need the menu. You're just you're ordering.
You know exactly what's on it.
You know exactly what you're having, and there's a good mix of food as well. So you're not short of things to choose from.
Yeah, and I would say, tea houses are fairly similar to each other in terms of the facilities, and I would say they probably tend to be fairly similar for the location that you are in at that time. So, the tea houses lower down in Namche will have more facilities than the tea houses further up in Gorik-Shep or Lobuche. You might get a toilet and a shower in your room further down the trail, but you certainly won't be getting anything like that the higher up you go on the trail.
No, there is a bit of a difference. Like Namche is very different to Gorik-Shep, just in terms of how easy it is for them to get supplies in. So it does tend to be a bit bigger, a bit more established. Usually that's one of the last places that you would be able to get a hot shower. Although having said that, there are places higher up where you can now, with the tea houses that we stay in, they have started offering hot showers and things like that. Dingboche, for instance. They tend to be wooden, although as you get higher up, that does change a little bit. They're just really cozy, basic lodges. And I suppose it's just popped into my head, but one of the really funny things about them is you do get do you remember all the family pictures that they'll have on one of the walls? Because the people who run them also live in them. and you'll go into like the main dining room, and obviously there's a log burner and everyone's chatting and eating, and then in one corner there'll be almost like the family tree, and then usually a picture of the Dalai Lama as well, which I always think is quite amusing when you get into the main bit. But
yeah, and I think it's just really nice as well, because like we tend to use we use the same tea houses all the time, whether we're on an Everest base camp trek, whether we're on an Annapurna circuit trek, like, and we get to know the owners of the tea houses as well over all that time. Like I've got them as friends of mine on Facebook, and they, Ram, my mate Ram, sends me messages all the time, and it's just really nice when you get back up there and see them again. You're only staying there for one night. Namche and Dingboche, you'll have 2 nights in their tea house, but generally you're only there for a night. So that is what a tea house is. Another question is around luggage restrictions on the flight to Lukla. Again, there's blog posts on our website for this, but you are restricted to 15 kilos in weight on the Lukla flight, and that's not you being weighed. That's your duffel bag being weighed and your day pack being weighed. So you're only allowed 15 kilos between those. Like I said, you don't get weighed. So sliding your battery pack into your pocket, putting your camera around your neck, wearing your really heavy boots are all tricks of how to do that. I did go and record a new kit list video for Everest, but I'm going through all of them and recording new kit lists for all of our trips. But I did a new one for Everest Base Camp the other day and Island Peak, showing you how to pack it, what to pack, and then showing the weight of my bag once I've packed everything in it. And I can pretty much get it into about 12 kilos. So it is completely doable. And that is carrying a few extra nice things as well. So yeah, so that's your luggage restriction.
Yeah,
you can go on, Karen.
So one of our guides, Gareth. I think him and Tony, when they went and did Island Peak a couple of years ago, had a bit of a competition to see how light they could go. And yeah, they were coming in at something ridiculous, like 7 or 8 kilos for the whole trip. So although I wouldn't recommend that, I would say make the most of your allowance. It's always nice to have a couple of luxury items, but yeah, it's completely achievable.
But also remember that you're probably going to buy a few things on the way back down as well. So make sure you've got some spare capacity for when you want to buy your t-shirt or whatever it is you want to buy on the way down. So someone's put there, reminds me of the 7K limit for the Inca Trail. Yeah, again, you get a weight limit on the Inca Trail, and again, you're only trekking for 4 days. You don't need to take very much stuff with you. You should be able to get in. And I have recorded another video on packing my bag for the Inca Trail as well. And again, I weighed it, and I was well under the 7 kilo limit for everything that I needed. So I think, it's like on any trip, isn't it? You know what it's like, Jake. You pack, you get back to the hotel at the end of it, and you look at how much stuff you've got left that you haven't actually used. I think we're all kind of...
Packing is one of life's great mysteries. It's really bizarre. Like I'll try and pack as much as I can for base camp before I actually get to Nepal. So that might sound a bit weird, but because what we do is when you get to Kathmandu, there's a hotel that we stay at, regardless of the trip that you're doing, and you can leave a small bag there with a few belongings in it if you like. So I'll usually have some jeans, t-shirts, a couple of nice clothes that I'll leave in that bag, and that will stay at the hotel. So when I'm flying out, I try to pack my main duffel bag really with everything that I'm going to take on the trail and not much more. And there's always a few little extra things that I'll have. So I'll get into my hotel room in Kathmandu the night before we drive to Ramachhap. I'll just chuck those last things in. Suddenly it's another 6 kilos, and you're like, how has that happened? And everything seems so important, and then you come back from the trip, and you realise that actually there were things that you never even took out your bag. So it is a bit of a mystery, even still to me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think especially if you're going to like Nepal, because generally on Nepal these days you'll either fly Emirates or you'll the other one's just gone out of my head. Emirates. Qatar, and generally you've got a 23 kilo weight limit, 25 kilo weight limit, and you can take 2 bags as long as you are within that 25 kilo weight limit. So I will generally pack 2 medium-sized duffel bags. One is my stuff ready for the trek, and the other one then is my stuff that I'm going to leave in the hotel before or after, and do it that way. So actually my bag ready for Everest is already packed. So on the night before you're due to fly out, you're not then trying to get your bag packed, get it within the weight limit. You've already weighed it, you know how much it weighs, and you're good to go, to ready for the trek.
Yeah, it just takes that pressure off a little bit, especially when it gets that evening and everybody's pulling things out of their bags and chatting to each other about, oh, well, should I take this? Should I take that? But yeah, if you can get as much of it done beforehand, then saves you any stress.
What options do I have if I want to explore Nepal, but I don't want to trek or climb a mountain? Well, I mean, ultimately, it's not really something we offer as a company. I mean, we do our best of Nepal trip, but that still includes a few days trekking. I think if you are going to Nepal, you are generally going to go there for the trekking. That is going to be your reason to go to Nepal, I would say. If you don't want to do a long multi-day trek, then the Best of Nepal trip really does tick all those boxes, because you get to trek around the Poon Hill region, which is a lovely little 4-day trek, not too strenuous. Get to see some amazing views of Annapurna. You'll obviously get to see Kathmandu. You get to see Bhaktapur. You also get to go down to the Chitwan National Park and do that part. So it basically covers all the best parts of Nepal on one trip. But I would say that, you're probably not going to go to Nepal if you're not going to do some trekking in some form, I would say.
I think it does end up being the best way to explore the country. So although you might not want to sign up to one of our big multi-day trekking trips, being able to get out and do a little bit is actually really worthwhile. And there's so many places near to Kathmandu and in the surrounding areas that you can go and do, where actually for a couple of hours hiking, nothing too strenuous, you get the most incredible views, which is really nice. But I've just seen that Steve is watching. So Steve Neesham is one of the guys that I took out to base camp last time. So I just thought I'd say hi. And Kitap just popped up as well, one of our Nepalese guys. And I think he's actually one of our biggest.
If I disappear now, if I disappear, you'll still see. But Kitap's actually, his face is behind my face in the photo. So, hi Kitap, how are you? Hope you're doing well.
He has said, there you go. Poon Hill is the best trek for a short trek. So that's something that they would look at. I think what I was saying last time was, there are trips that we're building, there's trips that we're developing. If there's an interest from people in anything in particular, drop us a message, leave a comment. It's all things that we will look into. Get in touch with us.
Well, like I said, the Poon Hill trek is the one that we do on the Best of Nepal trip anyway. So up through Gorapani and into Poon Hill, and you get an amazing view from Poon Hill as well. So that's one reason why we do that trek on the Best of Nepal, because as Kitap's just confirmed there, it is the best trek for a short trek. So we're getting some Kitap's approving what we're doing. So
it's quality assurance on us.
Yeah, quality assurance there from Kitap. One of the questions that we get asked, well, I don't think it's a question we get asked in the office very much, but it's one of the things that I struggle with a little bit when it comes to looking at comparing. There's lots of companies out there that do Everest Base Camp treks. There's lots of companies out there that do Annapurna circuit treks. We're not the only one that does it. We know that. But I think a really key thing is that I would suggest to people is to look at the package that you are booking and seeing what is included within that package. Because like one thing we do on all of our trips to Nepal is when we're out on a trek, we include all of the food onto the price already of the trip. So there's a lot of companies out there that don't do that. And then when you read in the small print and look at what's not included, and it says food, and then please bring between $300 and $400 to cover the cost of your food on the trek. You know, you look at it, and when you look at you know, our price, and then you look at a competitor's price, we might be a couple £100 more, but then when you consider actually you suddenly need to take $400 extra with you, we then become a whole lot cheaper. Now, we get fed very well. You know, you get to order off the menu breakfast, lunch, and dinner while you're on the trek. And you get teas, coffees, you know, all of that is included as well. And I just think, like, I've been there before, like in a tea house, and like you've stopped for lunch, you've ordered your food, and obviously these tea houses have only got small kitchens in them. So you've sat there and waited, your food comes out, and generally it all comes out at the same time. Like no one's left waiting for ages for it's pretty well done. But then I've seen other groups do exactly the same as us, but at the end of it, they've then got to split a bill. They've then got to sit there and work out who's had what, and they're all paying, and somebody needs change, and like I haven't got anything smaller than this, and like, oh, I'm still owed another, you know, so many rupee. Like, it's just an absolute faff, and one that I certainly don't want our customers to go through on a trip, which is why we include it as part of all of our treks, that all of your food is covered. But I suppose, you know, the thing is when you look at prices of any trip, whether it's Kilimanjaro, Everest Base Camp, Machu Picchu, just have a look at what's included within the price. So you're actually comparing apples with apples as opposed to comparing apples with oranges, because ultimately, you know, we might not appear to be the cheapest when it comes to it, but, you know, we do add plenty of, you know, we generally have 3 or 4 extra nights in Kathmandu, 2 before, 2 after, 1 before, 2, you know, that's all included in the cost. You know, transfers from getting you from the airport to the hotel. You know, if you've never been to Nepal before, to walk out of the airport and try and get a taxi into Thamel and find your hotel is potentially not an easy thing to do, is it?
It's not an easy thing at all, and it can be very overwhelming, and you've got so many people trying to get you to go in their taxis, and you're not sure what the going rate is, and all of the names are really complicated of where you might be staying and things like that. So yeah, it does make it easier. And I think,
and sometimes there's 2 hotels called the same thing. Like that's the
Yeah. That can be really confusing, as well as when they go where, and you're trying to get all the details and pull out your folder and stuff like that. So it does make it a bit easier. The other thing I was going to say is that, I don't know about you, but I hate having all of these unexpected costs. If I book onto a trip, I'd rather know exactly what's covered, exactly what's being paid for. The worst thing in my mind that you can do is turn up to a country and suddenly they start telling you, oh yeah, no, this isn't, or this isn't, and you've got to figure it out. You're already there then.
It's also not easy to get money out on the Everest Trail, is it? You know, a lot of the time the cash. I mean, there's only cash machines in Namche. They don't always work. So if you have
cash machines in Kathmandu, and then Namche is the last place. But I mean, I visited 6 cash machines in Kathmandu before one actually churned out some money. Like a lot of them don't work. A lot of them have run empty and don't get filled up in time. So yeah, there's a lot of difficulty with trying to get cash out unless you know where to look. And that's the other thing. We've discovered a few places that do pretty much always have cash, and if they don't, there's another place that we can go to that will. So yeah, first time trying to figure all of that out can be a bit tricky.
Yeah, I think you're right. Hello, Paul Mitchell. Paul's booked on to come out with us for our Best of Nepal at the end of the year. So glad you're looking forward to that one.
There you go. And he said he booked on it at the Outdoor Expo.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, and he's coming again on Sunday to see us. So Jake and I, as well as Dave and Sean and Davina, will be up at the Outdoor Expo in the NEC this weekend. So if you are, got a loose end this weekend and you want something to do and you're close to Birmingham, then come along and say hi to the team and come and have a chat with us and talk about trips, because that's what we'll be doing all day, hopefully, is talking to lots of lovely people about exciting places to go. Mira Peak or Island Peak? What's the difference? Sean's just asked that in the chat. I mean, Sean, you work for the business, so hopefully you'd know that one's higher than the other. But differences between Mira Peak and Island Peak. They're both classed as trekking peaks, although, and again, we've done podcast around both of those and talked about them. And there's also, I think there's a video on our YouTube channel. If Tom's listening to this, he might be able to jump onto YouTube and find the video where I talk about the difference between the two of them. Like I say, we offer them both. Island Peak we do currently as an EBC Island Peak trek. Island Peak, I would say, is harder than Mira Peak in terms of the last part of it. In terms of, I would say it's more mountaineer, even though it's classed as a trekking peak. The final push on Island Peak is quite hard. Mira Peak is a much longer trek duration wise, but actually the push to the summit on Mira Peak is actually a little bit easier, I would say, than Island Peak, even though Mira Peak is higher in altitude than Island Peak. So those are the real differences. The other difference I would say is Mira Peak, I would say, classes more as an expedition, in terms of you are not on the beaten track, I would say. So Mira Peak, to get to Mira Peak, is not as commercialized as going to Island Peak, because Island Peak is following the same route as Everest Base Camp. So there's a lot of people around. Whereas but for both trips, you fly into Lukla the same, but immediately once you get to Lukla on the Mira Peak, you hang a right, and it's not as, the tea houses are nowhere near as commercialized. You're not walking through big villages like you are on the Island Peak Everest Base Camp trip. So I would say the Mira Peak is more of an expedition style trip perhaps than Island Peak is. So those would be my differences. But Tom has found the video that I made talking about which is harder between the two. So he's just put a link to that in the group there. I'm just having a quick flick through, Jake, just make sure we've covered everything that's been asked.
Yeah, let's have a look. We've got a few people.
I mean, Cam wants to bump into NIMS. Well, there's only so much we can offer. I mean,
but having said that, the last time we were out, we were out at the same time as Kenton Cool. We were out.
I just missed Kenton. I was in Kenton. I was in Namche the same time as Kenton.
I was out at the same time that Nims was out. We didn't cross paths, but we were out at the same time. We did see a lot of his expedition company hauling all of their gear up and branded up. That's
one thing we haven't. That's one thing we haven't really ticked off during this chat is, like, when is the best time to go to Everest Base Camp? Now, obviously there are 2 seasons to go to Everest Base Camp. You've got the spring and you've got the autumn. But if you want to see more action at Everest Base Camp, then you're going to want to be going in the spring season. That's when you're going to see Everest Base Camp alive with tents and lots of action happening. A lot more people climb Everest in the spring than they do in the autumn. So if you're that's your reason for wanting to go to Everest Base Camp, is to see it alive and in action, then you're going to want to go in the springtime. It's going to be very quiet in the autumn, and you're not going to see much around the Everest Base Camp itself, I would say. Yeah,
absolutely. I tend to always explain to people in terms of we offer slightly like right at the beginning of the spring season, and then right at the end of the autumn season, just because they're a little bit quieter. As we're coming back from our Everest Base Camp trip that we run in the spring, usually you'll pass quite a lot of people coming up, and one of the big feedbacks that I get from a lot of our groups is, wow, I'm really glad we started that week earlier, because if we'd started a week later, we would have been caught up in all of that. And the times of year that we go, although there are other people there, it still feels quite quiet and like we're one of the only groups, and that's really nice. The spring season, you can feel it building. You can feel everybody's getting ready, everybody's preparing, the tea houses are getting ready. Base camp's a little bit busier, but again, it's just moving into that stage. And then when we go back in the autumn season towards the end, and again, great time of year, but you feel that everything's winding down. That main busy season has gone. The tea houses are starting to recover a little bit, starting to get ready for the next season. So yeah, that's the main difference. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think we've covered everything off, Jake. We've talked about Nepal. We've talked about the trips. There's plenty of, the guys have been busy in the office, posting links up to kind of support the questions that we've been answering and give you a bit more information if you want to go and find more out about it. We've got a lot of trips in Nepal. We've got a lot of, we start again next month, back out in Nepal again. So I'm not out in the spring season, but I know you are, Jake, and I assume you're looking forward to heading back.
I'm really looking forward to heading back. Lots of people ask me, they go, "Oh, do you ever get bored?" Or, do you, like, if I've done it a few times, does that become boring, or do I not look forward to it? And I look forward to it maybe more every single time, because every time I go out, it just refreshes how much I enjoy it. And because we use the same tea houses and the same people and the same guides every single time, I look forward to catching up with all of them again. I look forward to seeing people who I haven't seen since either last season or the last year. So yeah, there's always things to look forward to, and there's always things that I discovered that I didn't pick up on the last time. The first time I went, it was brilliant. I took so much in. Second time I went, certain things weren't as new, so I got the chance to look into other things a little bit more. So every time I go, I'm picking up new and exciting things. Most of that is new places to eat, but
I don't doubt it, Jake. I really don't.
But no, I'm really excited. I'm counting down the days until we do base camp and Gokyo.
Well, Jake, thanks ever so much for coming on again today onto the show. It's been great chatting with you. Obviously, I will see you at the weekend at the National Outdoor Expo. Hope that some of you who are watching are going to come along and say hello as well. I won't be here next week because I will be. I'll be back in Morocco again on the whitewater one. I did manage to come in and do the one last week because I was in a nice hotel, but I'll be in the high Atlas Mountains with with very weak mobile signal, I imagine. So I don't think I'll come into the.
Might be a bit tricky to live stream from your whitewater rafting.
It might be a little bit, yeah. So it might be a bit bumpy on the way. But Jake, you're going to be joined next week by Hannah, who is in our marketing team, and she's going to come on next week. I mean, Jake says it's to tell you guys how to take better photos, but I actually think it's more about showing Jake how to take better photos on trips that Hannah can actually use in the social media. But she's going to be sharing that with you next week on the Bucket List Adventure Travel Show. So until next week, I won't see you, but Jake will. So thanks very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.